Walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, "Can't eat here." I would go to a hotel and they say, "Then can't stay here."
How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Hall of Fame Major League Baseball player Reggie Jackson opening up about the racism he faced in Birmingham, Alabama when he came into the major leagues at 21 years old in 1967. Now, this was really honest, really heartfelt, and kind of hard to listen to, but I think we need more accounts like this from guys that have actually lived it. I don't want to hear academics who are 21 years old right now talking about things that happened in the past. I want to hear from those who actually lived it, those who experienced it. Tell me about what you went through. That's what I want to hear. I heard it from my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents. I heard about a story about my great-grandma having to get on the back of the bus when she would go to a certain part of the country, leaving West Virginia, going down south. And once you get to a certain station, they say, okay, get to the back. Stuff like that. Or you can't go to a certain restaurant. You can't do this. You can't do that. Okay. That kind of thing is a real thing. These are real things that happen. It's part of history. We can't really get away from it. Now, before we get into it, this is Reggie Jackson back then. This is 1968 in Yankee Stadium. This is after he was at the minor league team in Birmingham the year before. Okay. And you see the headline here from NPR. Baseball great Reggie Jackson opens up about racism faces a player on television. So let's go ahead and get into that. And I will link to the whole thing in the box. And I may pause it at certain points to give my 2 cents to avoid the copyright claim. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Reggie, the baton has been passed for over a century here. We've been talking earlier about if it wasn't for the Willie Mays, the Jackie Robinson, the Reggie Jacksons, the three of us wouldn't have an opportunity to play. How emotional is it for you to come back to a play that you played with one of the greatest teams around?
Now, for you guys who may not be watching, or for you guys who may not know, you have Reggie Jackson right there in the center. On his left, on the left, on his right, you have Alex Rodriguez, also an amazing Major League Baseball player. And on the right, his left, you have David Ortiz, another great Major League Baseball player. I'll talk about those guys and their race and whatnot in a minute.
Alex, when people ask me a question like that, it's like coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Now, I got to pause right here. Sorry for this, but they're in Brickwood Field, Birmingham, Alabama.
I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, "Can't eat here." I would go to a hotel and they say, "Then can't stay here." We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner and they pointed me out with the N-word. "He can't come in here."
Now, let's pause for a minute. I saw this girl on Twitter, white girl, go viral for using the N-word. People were making jokes and laughing. I was not amused. I'm like, there's actual context behind that, historical things that were not that long ago. This is 1967 he's talking about this, okay? And all the N-word and the racism and stuff like that, we got to leave that in the past. Leave it in the past. And people are going to talk about, well, what about blacks that use it? It's really just kind of a nonsensical argument. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Let him finish.
Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, "We're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted." Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out.
Now, these are the real things that black folks went through during this time. And it was not just him, but Jackie Robinson, all these guys that broke the color barrier face stuff like this in certain parts of the USA, where you still had segregation, whites over there, blacks over there. If you interfere in this space at all, it was a negative thing. You're trying to, and he's a light-skinned guy. Some may think that he's not black. He's obviously black. And back then, they're definitely going to look at you and kind of examine you. There was rumors that Babe Ruth was black. And I always, personally, can I say this? Personally, I always thought Babe Ruth was black. I'm looking at pictures like, okay, this is like one of my uncles or something. This dude is just light-skinned black person. The nose, the lips, the facial structure, all of that looks like he's black to me. But let's keep on going. And you know what? This is part of the reason why, if you have any kind of black in you at all, you're considered black. The one drop rule, the legacy of Jim Crow, racism, or whatever. People just don't get over that. It's going to be just stamped in their mind. Do you consider this man to be a black person? How about Barack Obama when he's clearly black and white mixed? He's black and white mixed, but he's not considered white or mixed. He's considered black. But anyway, let me continue.
I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before. And they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old at a church here and never got indicted.
That is correct. That happened. There's a Spike Lee documentary about that called 4 Little Girls. That is 100% correct. That did happen in Birmingham in 1963, right before he got there. Like, he got there probably about 3-4 years later, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. So it was still pretty fresh.
I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager, and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, and Lee Myers, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Reggie. I mean, they're laughing, but he's dead serious. He's not joking. Like, that's the way it was. You want to, like, they're going to antagonize you, provoke you, assault you, do whatever. You retaliate, you getting strung up. That's just what it was back then.
I can't even imagine. It's awful you had to go through that, but, appreciate you sharing the rawness and the honesty of it with our audience. I mean, really,
we love you, Reg.
Yeah. Thank you.
Quick history lesson right there.
That's a great history lesson. Reggie Jackson telling us all about it, preaching. Wow.
So that was a lot there. That was a whole lot there. Now, I just want to address one thing here. A few things, but one thing before we just shift off of this particular screenshot. I was speaking about A-Rod and David Ortiz. These are Dominican dudes, right? But they're also black. At one point, Major League Baseball had quite a few African-American players. Not so much anymore. There are some, but not so much. And the reason is because Major League Baseball has camps in a lot of the Caribbean and like South America where there's black players and just other Hispanics, maybe not necessarily black players. But it's cheaper to have camps down there and just train them and bring them over here and sign them for what somebody said was a bag of chips than to try and set up camps in the United States and convince black kids to stop playing basketball and switch to baseball. So that's part of that. So you're going to see a bunch of dark-skinned guys, but they all picky panty. Okay, that's what's going on. And it's because Major League Baseball's policy decisions. But as I close, I want to say this. Shout out to Reggie Jackson for being honest, open about his experience in baseball in the early days. Shout out to everybody for just letting them get his point across, for not trying to interrupt, for not trying to add their 2 cents, to add their own anecdotes. Just let them get it off. And I think we need to have more honest conversations about the way things were back then in order to go forward. I don't want anybody trying to sugarcoat it. And I don't want anyone trying to exaggerate. Tell it for what it is. Give the actual story directly how it happened, whether somebody may like or dislike what's being said. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your take on what Reggie Jackson said? Do you think that it's right on point? Have you heard stories like that before? How about some of your own family? Have you seen things like that go on? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. I mean, to me, that's right on point. Y'all know I got family, West Virginia, that's where I was born. I heard a lot of stories. I heard some stories that kind of make you turn your head, like, really, that happened? And some stories where you might want to start crying. I've heard a lot. Some really, really bad things, some things that are just kind of crazy about the way things were back in the day. But once we're honest about what was happening in this country, then we could maybe go forward a little bit better. But when we start to lie and exaggerate and omit and whatnot, that's when people get confused and nobody understands what's going on. In order to understand your destination, you got to understand your point of origin, at least in my humble opinion. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.